There's a name that governments monitor, a prophecy that makes empires tremble, a figure so powerful that even mentioning him triggers surveillance systems across multiple nations. Yet most people have never heard his true story. They know fragments, whispers, but never the complete picture that's unfolding right before our eyes. In 2024, something shifted. Scholars who had spent decades avoiding specific timelines suddenly started whispering dates. 2025 became more than just another year. It became a deadline that nobody wanted to discuss publicly. Islamic authorities began issuing warnings against date setting, but the conversations continued in private. Why? What makes this particular figure so dangerous that even religious leaders fear speaking his name too loudly? This isn't about folklore or ancient mythology. This is about a bloodline that has been systematically hunted, monitored, and feared for over 1,000 years. A lineage so threatening to established power that entire empires have risen and fallen trying to eliminate it. Yet despite centuries of persecution, surveillance, and attempts at destruction, this bloodline survived. And now, according to some of the most respected scholars alive today, its time may have finally come. The bloodline that terrifies empires. Every empire fears one thing above all else: the prophecy that predicts its downfall. For Islamic empires throughout history, that prophecy has always centered around one specific family line. Not a political dynasty built on conquest or wealth, but a spiritual inheritance that flows directly from the Prophet, Muhammad himself, through his beloved daughter Fatima. This isn't just genealogy, it's a divine appointment that no earthly power can revoke or replicate. The Mahdi, whose name literally means the guided one, carries within his veins the genetic and spiritual legacy of the most transformative figure in human history. His great-great-grandfather was Ali ibn Abi Talib, the Lion of Allah. His great-great-grandmother was Fatima, known as the leader of the women of paradise. But here's what makes this bloodline truly terrifying to those in power. It comes with an unbreakable promise. The Prophet Muhammad didn't just mention this descendant in passing. He specifically stated that this man would emerge during the darkest period of human history to restore justice when the earth had become filled with oppression. He would bear the Prophet's own name, Muhammad, and would be recognized not by political campaigns or military might, but by the light of divine authority that would shine from his face. The Abbasid caliphs understood this threat better than anyone. They didn't just monitor this family line casually, they infiltrated their homes, placed spies among their servants, and tracked every birth, every marriage, every movement. Historical records show that Abbasid agents were given specific orders: identify any potential claimant to this prophetic lineage and eliminate the threat before it could materialize. What they didn't understand was that this wasn't a political conspiracy they could crush with conventional warfare. This was a divine plan that operated beyond their ability to control or predict. Every attempt to interfere only seemed to strengthen the mystery surrounding this chosen bloodline. Modern governments continue this same pattern of surveillance, though they've become more sophisticated about it. Intelligence agencies monitor certain family names, track genealogical research, and flag any individuals who begin claiming connection to this prophetic lineage. Because they know what history teaches: when the true heir finally emerges, no earthly power will be able to stand against him. The birth hidden from history. The year was 255 AH, and fear gripped the Abbasid palace. Their spies had been reporting suspicious activity around the home of Imam Hassan al-Askari, the 11th in the line of prophetic succession. Something was happening that threatened everything they had built their empire upon, but they couldn't quite identify what it was. The Abbasids had good reason to be terrified. They ruled through force and political manipulation, but their authority was constantly challenged by the prophetic promise that one day a descendant of the Prophet would rise to restore true Islamic leadership. Their strategy was simple: monitor the bloodline so closely that any potential claimant would be identified and eliminated before he could mature into a threat. What they didn't expect was divine intervention. The birth of the Mahdi wasn't announced with celebration or fanfare. There were no royal proclamations or public ceremonies. Instead, it occurred under such secretive circumstances that even members of the household weren't initially aware of what had transpired. His mother, Nargis, had been chosen for this role not through political arrangement, but through divine guidance. Some accounts describe prophetic dreams that led to her joining this sacred bloodline. The child who entered the world that day wasn't just another baby. Witnesses described supernatural signs. He spoke words of divine remembrance even as a newborn. His gaze carried an otherworldly awareness, and there was a radiance about him that defied explanation. But perhaps most remarkably, Imam Hassan al-Askari took immediate steps to conceal his existence from the outside world. This wasn't cowardice or shame. It was protection of the most precious trust humanity had ever been given. The Mahdi's father understood that revealing his son's identity would mean certain death at the hands of the Abbasid authorities. So he created layers of concealment so sophisticated that even torture and interrogation couldn't breach them. Only the most trusted companions were permitted to know about the child's existence. Even then, they were sworn to secrecy that went beyond mere political discretion. This was a sacred trust that would determine the future of divine justice on earth. The Abbasids continued their surveillance, their raids, their investigations, but they remained completely blind to the most important birth in their empire's history. This concealment set the pattern for everything that would follow. The Mahdi's entire existence would be characterized by hiddenness, not because of weakness, but because of divine wisdom. His birth proved that Allah's plans unfold according to divine timing, not human expectation. No matter how sophisticated the surveillance, how thorough the oppression, or how determined the enemies, divine will cannot be frustrated by earthly schemes. The Abbasid Empire eventually collapsed, as all empires do, but the child they never found continued to exist, hidden from their sight, but never absent from divine protection. That birth marked the beginning of the most patient revolution in human history, one that operates through concealment rather than spectacle, through spiritual transformation rather than political maneuvering. The Great Disappearance. What happened next defies every conventional understanding of leadership and authority. Instead of emerging as a public figure, instead of gathering followers or establishing a movement, the Mahdi simply vanished from human sight. Not through death, not through defeat, but through what Islamic theology calls occultation, a divine concealment that preserves his life while hiding him from those who seek to destroy him. This disappearance began in two phases, each more mysterious than the last. During the minor occultation, which lasted approximately 70 years, the Mahdi remained in contact with the believing community through 4 specially chosen representatives. These weren't political appointees or ambitious religious leaders. They were spiritually purified individuals who served as conduits between the hidden imam and those who desperately needed his guidance. Through these deputies, the Mahdi continued to answer questions, resolve disputes, and provide direction during some of the most turbulent periods in Islamic history. His responses came not as public speeches or written treatises, but as carefully guarded communications that reached only those pure-hearted enough to receive them. This system proved that his concealment wasn't abandonment, it was a different form of leadership entirely. But when the 4th and final deputy died, something unprecedented occurred. The major occultation began, a period of complete hiddenness that continues to this day. No more intermediaries, no more communications, no more visible connection between the Mahdi and the world that desperately needed his presence. This wasn't divine neglect, it was divine strategy. The major occultation serves as the ultimate test of sincere faith versus cultural conformity. Can you believe in divine justice when you can't see its representative? Can you maintain hope for truth when falsehood appears to dominate every system? Can you prepare for righteousness when wickedness seems to control every institution? During this period of hiddenness, the Mahdi hasn't become inactive or irrelevant. According to Islamic teachings, he continues to exist, to witness, and to pray for humanity. He sees every injustice, hears every cry for help, and intercedes before Allah on behalf of those who call upon divine mercy. His concealment doesn't eliminate his influence, it purifies it. The hidden Imam serves as humanity's connection to divine grace, even when humanity doesn't recognize that connection. Through his unseen presence, calamities are averted, hearts receive guidance, and the balance between good and evil is maintained. Without him, the spiritual infrastructure of the world would collapse entirely. But his hiddenness also serves another purpose. It forces every individual to examine their own spiritual condition without the comfort of external validation. Are you preparing for justice because you genuinely love truth, or only because you're tired of injustice? Are you seeking the Mahdi because you want divine leadership, or simply because you're frustrated with human leadership? The Great Disappearance continues because the world hasn't yet produced enough hearts pure enough to deserve his visible presence. When enough souls have been refined through sincere devotion, when enough individuals have chosen truth over comfort, when enough believers have prepared themselves spiritually rather than just intellectually, then the concealment will end. Until that moment arrives, his absence serves as a mirror, reflecting back to each of us the exact condition of our own spiritual preparedness. Signs unfolding right now. The prophecies weren't vague or metaphorical. They were devastatingly specific. The Prophet Muhammad described in precise detail what the world would look like when the Mahdi's emergence became imminent. Those descriptions read like today's headlines with terrifying accuracy. Wars would ravage the lands of Sham and Iraq until the soil became soaked with blood. Check any news feed from Syria or Iraq over the past decade. The devastation matches prophetic descriptions with surgical precision. These aren't random conflicts or political disagreements. According to the traditions, these specific regional wars serve as preliminary tremors before the major earthquake of the Mahdi's appearance. Truth would become so rare that speaking it would make someone appear insane to the majority. Look around at how quickly factual statements are labeled as conspiracy theories, how speaking about moral absolutes gets dismissed as extremism, how defending traditional values makes someone a social outcast. The inversion of truth and falsehood has reached levels that previous generations couldn't have imagined. Leaders would betray their own people for personal gain while claiming to serve their interests. The gap between public rhetoric and private action among world leaders has become so vast that even their most devoted supporters struggle to defend their contradictions. This isn't ordinary political corruption, it's the systematic abandonment of every principle except self-preservation. But there's another sign that receives less attention yet might be the most significant: the spiritual restlessness that's spreading through the hearts of sincere believers worldwide. It's not depression or anxiety in the clinical sense. It's a deep, inexplicable yearning for something pure, something real, something that transcends the artificial systems that dominate modern life. This yearning manifests differently in different people. Some experience it as an intense longing during prayer, a sense that their souls are calling out for something beyond their current understanding. Others feel it as profound dissatisfaction with conventional religious institutions, not because they've lost faith, but because their faith demands something more authentic than what these institutions currently provide. Many describe feeling spiritually homesick for a place they've never been, nostalgic for a time they've never experienced, loyal to a leader they've never met. This isn't psychological instability, it's spiritual recognition. Their souls are responding to frequencies that their minds haven't yet learned to interpret. The most powerful sign might be the silence itself. Notice how mainstream Islamic discourse avoids deep discussion of the Mahdi's role. Major religious institutions, influential scholars, prominent speakers, they'll discuss every other aspect of Islamic eschatology in great detail. But when it comes to the Mahdi's specific mission, the conversation becomes vague, theoretical, distant. This silence isn't accidental, it's protective, because discussing the Mahdi's actual role means confronting uncomfortable truths about current religious and political systems. It means acknowledging that most of what passes for Islamic leadership today would be completely transformed or eliminated when true divine authority emerges. The signs aren't just external events we can observe in the news. They're internal transformations happening within the hearts of those being prepared for recognition. When enough hearts have been refined, when enough souls have been awakened, when enough individuals have chosen truth over comfort, that's when the concealment ends. The question isn't whether the signs are manifesting. The question is whether you're among those whose hearts are spiritually sensitive enough to recognize what they're witnessing. His hidden role today. The greatest misconception about the Mahdi's occultation is that it represents absence or inactivity. Nothing could be further from the truth. His concealment doesn't eliminate his influence. It purifies and amplifies it in ways that visible leadership never could. During this period of hiddenness, the Mahdi functions as what Islamic theology calls the Hujjat Allah, the living proof of God on earth. This isn't a symbolic title or honorary designation. It's a functional reality that determines the spiritual climate of the entire world. Without his presence, the moral structure of existence would collapse entirely, because the earth is never left without divine representation. This hidden presence operates through multiple dimensions that most people never recognize. Through his prayers, global calamities are averted or minimized. Through his intercession, guidance reaches hearts that have become lost in darkness. Through his spiritual rank, the balance between truth and falsehood is maintained until the appointed time for his emergence arrives. But his influence extends beyond abstract spiritual mechanics. Throughout history, there have been countless accounts of mysterious strangers appearing at moments of crisis, individuals who provide exactly the guidance, protection, or direction needed, then disappear without leaving any trace of their identity or background. While skeptics dismiss these stories as folklore or wishful thinking, believers see them as glimpses of the Mahdi's ongoing interaction with humanity. A traveler stranded in dangerous territory suddenly encounters a guide who leads them to safety, then vanishes. A person facing an impossible decision receives counsel from a stranger whose wisdom proves flawless, but who can never be found again. A community threatened by disaster is warned by someone who appears from nowhere and disappears, just as mysteriously. These encounters share common characteristics. The mysterious individual displays knowledge they shouldn't possess, provides assistance that proves precisely accurate, and vanishes in ways that defy logical explanation. The people who experience these encounters are left with an unshakable sense that they've been touched by something beyond ordinary human experience. But the Mahdi's hidden role extends far beyond individual encounters. He serves as a spiritual anchor for the entire believing community, whether they recognize his influence or not. During periods of widespread despair, hope somehow persists in purified hearts. During times of overwhelming falsehood, commitment to truth somehow survives among the sincere. During epochs of moral collapse, spiritual aspiration somehow continues among those who genuinely seek divine pleasure. This preservation isn't accidental or automatic. It's maintained through the prayers, supplications, and spiritual efforts of the hidden Imam, who stands before Allah on behalf of humanity, even when humanity remains unconscious of this representation. His concealment also serves as an ongoing test that separates sincere devotion from superficial attachment. Are you committed to justice as a principle, or only frustrated with specific injustices that affect you personally? Do you long for divine leadership because you genuinely want truth to prevail, or simply because you're tired of human leadership disappointing you? The Mahdi's hiddenness forces each individual to confront these questions without the comfort of external validation. There's no visible movement to join, no charismatic leader to follow, no organized campaign to support. There's only the internal call to purify your heart, uphold justice even when it costs you, and maintain hope even when circumstances suggest despair. Those who understand this hidden dynamic recognize that waiting for the Mahdi isn't passive. It's the most active form of spiritual preparation possible, transforming yourself into the kind of person who would be worthy to stand beside him when the concealment finally ends. The controversial predictions. Throughout 2024, something unprecedented began happening in Islamic scholarly circles. Respected academics who had spent decades avoiding specific timelines suddenly started suggesting that the Mahdi's emergence might be imminent. The year 2025 began appearing in private discussions with increasing frequency, though most scholars remained careful not to make definitive public statements. This shift wasn't based on astrological calculations or numerological speculation. Instead, it emerged from careful analysis of current global conditions against the backdrop of prophetic descriptions. The convergence of signs, regional wars, moral inversion, leadership corruption, spiritual yearning reached levels that many scholars found impossible to ignore. But this trend immediately triggered intense controversy within Islamic academia. Senior religious authorities began issuing stern warnings against date setting, reminding their audiences that the Prophet Muhammad himself said only Allah knows the exact timing of the Mahdi's appearance. They argued that speculating about specific years violated Islamic principles and could lead to dangerous false expectations. The debate revealed a fundamental tension within Islamic scholarship. On one side stand those who believe that recognizing the signs requires intellectual honesty about their implications, even if that means acknowledging uncomfortable possibilities. On the other side are those who argue that date setting inevitably leads to spiritual corruption, regardless of how sophisticated the analysis appears. This controversy gained additional complexity when historical precedents entered the discussion. Throughout Islamic history, periods of intense expectation regarding the Mahdi's emergence have often coincided with the appearance of false claimants who exploited popular anticipation for personal gain. The list of individuals who have claimed to be the Mahdi reads like a catalogue of human ambition masquerading as divine appointment. From medieval political opportunists to modern cult leaders, the pattern remains consistent. Charismatic individuals emerge during times of crisis, declare themselves to be the awaited figure, gather devoted followers, then either die naturally or are exposed as fraudulent. These false claimants share common characteristics that serve as warnings for sincere believers. They typically emerge suddenly without the proper lineage, make grandiose promises about immediate transformation, demand unquestioning loyalty from followers, and focus more on gathering political power than on spiritual purification. The proliferation of false claimants throughout history has made many scholars extremely cautious about any discussion that might encourage similar delusions. They argue that maintaining vague timelines and emphasizing spiritual preparation over specific expectations provides the best protection against such deception. But supporters of the current scholarly predictions argue that avoiding honest analysis of contemporary signs represents a different kind of spiritual danger. They contend that excessive caution might cause believers to miss the actual emergence when it occurs, just as previous communities failed to recognize their prophetically promised deliverers. This debate has intensified because the current global situation presents unique features that distinguish it from previous periods of Mahdi expectation. Never before in human history has the entire world been connected through instant communication. Never before have global conflicts been visible in real time to audiences worldwide. Never before has moral confusion reached such sophisticated levels of systematic implementation. These unprecedented conditions suggest that if the Mahdi's emergence is indeed imminent, it will unfold in ways that previous generations could never have anticipated. The very technologies that enable global oppression might also serve as instruments for spreading awareness of his appearance across all continents simultaneously. The scholarly controversy ultimately reflects a deeper question about the relationship between divine timing and human readiness. Are the signs manifesting because the appointed time has arrived, or will the appointed time arrive when enough hearts have been properly prepared? The answer to that question might determine whether current predictions prove accurate or become another entry in the long history of premature expectations. When silence breaks. The emergence won't happen gradually or through political processes that people can track and analyze. According to the most authentic traditions, it will begin suddenly in Mecca, near the sacred Kaaba where millions of pilgrims gather annually. But even this location will initially witness rejection rather than acceptance. The man who is destined to fill the earth with justice will not want the responsibility that's about to be thrust upon him. When the small group of purified believers who first recognize his true identity approach him to pledge allegiance, he will try to turn them away. Not from false modesty or political calculation, but from genuine humility and awareness of the immense burden that divine leadership represents. This initial reluctance serves as one of the key signs that distinguish the true Mahdi from false claimants throughout history. Every fraudulent pretender to this title has eagerly embraced the power and attention that comes with the claim. The authentic figure will resist it until divine command leaves him no choice but to accept. When news of his emergence spreads beyond that initial circle of recognition, the global response will reveal the true spiritual condition of humanity. Hearts that have been prepared through years of sincere devotion will feel an inexplicable pull toward him, even before they understand the full implications of what's happening. They won't need elaborate proofs or convincing arguments. Their souls will recognize what their minds are still processing. But the majority reaction will be skepticism, rejection, and active opposition. This includes not just non-Muslim populations, but significant portions of the Muslim community itself. The most shocking aspect of his emergence will be how many people who regularly quote prophetic traditions about the Mahdi will reject him when he actually appears. This rejection won't be based on careful theological analysis or legitimate concerns about authenticity. It will stem from the uncomfortable truth that his leadership demands complete transformation of current religious, political, and social systems. Many who claim to want justice in theory will recoil when faced with justice in practice. His mission will be joined by another figure whose return has been prophesied in both Islamic and Christian traditions, Jesus Christ, who will descend from heaven and pray behind the Mahdi, confirming his divine appointment and uniting the two great prophetic missions into one final movement of truth. Together, they will face the ultimate test of their mission, confronting the Dajjal, the great deceiver whose influence will have reached unprecedented levels of global penetration. This won't be a simple battle between good and evil. It will be the final exposure of every heart's true allegiance when faced with the choice between divine truth and sophisticated deception. The victory over the Dajjal will mark the beginning of a transformation that extends far beyond political systems. The earth itself will begin to heal, not through environmental policies or technological solutions, but through the restoration of spiritual balance that affects every aspect of existence. Justice will be established not as an ideal that people strive toward, but as a lived reality that shapes every interaction, every economic transaction, every social relationship. Oppression will become literally impossible because the systems that enable it will be dismantled and replaced with structures based on divine guidance rather than human manipulation. But this transformation won't be imposed from above. It will emerge from within as hearts that have been prepared through years of concealment finally find the leadership they've been unconsciously seeking. The Mahdi's emergence will reveal what was always hidden in human nature, the deep longing for truth, justice, and divine connection that no amount of worldly distraction could permanently suppress. The silence will break not with violence or chaos, but with recognition, the recognition that what the soul has been searching for has finally appeared, and that the long period of waiting has prepared those who were sincere for a reality more beautiful than they ever dared to imagine. The ultimate test. When the Mahdi finally emerges from concealment, his presence won't create spiritual qualities in people. It will reveal what was already there. His appearance will function like a divine mirror, reflecting back the true condition of every heart with ruthless accuracy. This revelation will be the most shocking aspect of his emergence. People who spent years speaking passionately about justice will suddenly find excuses to avoid the sacrifices that real justice requires. Individuals who quoted prophetic traditions daily will reject the very figure those traditions promised. Religious leaders who built careers on discussing the Mahdi will become his most vocal opponents. The test isn't intellectual or theological, it's spiritual and moral. Do you love justice enough to accept it when it demands changes you didn't expect? Are you devoted to truth even when it challenges beliefs you've held for decades? Can you recognize divine authority even when it doesn't match your preconceptions about how it should appear? This test will reveal the difference between cultural attachment and genuine faith. Many who consider themselves devoted Muslims will fail spectacularly because their devotion was actually to tradition, comfort, and social acceptance, rather than to Allah's will as expressed through his chosen representative. The Mahdi's leadership won't accommodate compromise or partial commitment. He won't adjust divine principles to suit human preferences or cultural sensitivities. His call will be absolute, complete submission to divine guidance or complete separation from his movement. There will be no middle ground, no negotiated settlements, no gradual transitions. This absoluteness will break many who expected his leadership to validate their existing lifestyles while simply removing the problems they found inconvenient. They wanted relief, not transformation. They sought comfort, not truth. They desired victory over their enemies, not purification of themselves. But for those who have spent years preparing their souls during the period of concealment, his appearance will feel like coming home. They won't need to adjust their lives dramatically because they've already been living according to the principles he represents. Their recognition will be instantaneous, and their commitment will be unwavering. The ultimate test extends beyond individual spiritual preparedness to collective readiness. Is humanity capable of accepting leadership that serves Allah's will rather than human desires? Can societies function according to divine law rather than human legislation? Are people willing to prioritize spiritual development over material accumulation? History suggests that most communities fail this test. They prefer leaders who promise what they want to hear rather than what they need to accept. They choose comfort over growth, familiarity over truth, compromise over commitment. But the Mahdi's emergence represents the final opportunity for humanity to demonstrate that it has learned from previous failures. The long period of concealment served as preparation time, centuries of testing, refining, and purifying hearts that would be ready when divine leadership finally appeared. Those who pass this ultimate test won't do so because of their knowledge or their good intentions. They'll succeed because they genuinely surrendered their will to divine guidance years before the Mahdi's appearance. When he calls, they won't follow him, they'll recognize that they've already been following the path he represents. The test reveals that waiting for the Mahdi was never about anticipating an external event. It was about internal transformation that prepares the soul to recognize truth when it appears, accept authority when it's authentic, and commit completely when commitment is demanded. For the sincere, his emergence won't be the beginning of their spiritual journey. It will be the fulfillment of everything they've been working toward during the long years of his concealment. They won't follow him out of curiosity or desperation. They'll join him out of recognition, devotion, and love that has been growing in their hearts throughout the period of waiting. The ultimate test is already underway. Every choice you make, every compromise you accept or reject, every moment of sincerity or superficiality, all of it is preparation for that final moment of recognition when the hidden becomes manifest and every heart reveals its true condition.